Namaste and welcome. Welcome again to another episode of Live, Love, Engage. And I am really excited about our guest today because we've been having a little discussion before we even got started recording today. And it's just sparking new ideas of originally I had one idea of where to take this, but now I'm thinking maybe a different idea of where to take our conversation. So first off, I want to welcome Kim Curtis to Live, Love, Engage.
Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate being here.
Well, I am really excited to, as I said, to talk with you because Kim is a money person. She is a best-selling author of Money Secrets and a nationally recognized wealth management advisor and speaker, president, and CEO of Wealth Legacy Institute. And she's been profiled in several publications, including the Wall Street Journal. And what I really find refreshing and also inspiring is the fact that you are a woman in the financial arena, because I was doing some research and then you actually pointed out to me as well, because I was curious to know it's a male dominated industry, and I was wondering just what the percentage of women are, and it's pretty small. So I'm going to let you elaborate on that in a second, and also just tell us then why. What sort of drove you to be able to get into the business you're in, the business of money?
The business of money. I love that. I love that. You know, it's such an interesting journey that I had because I also have a legal background.
Oh, okay.
And that's what moved me out to Colorado to go to law school in Denver from New York. And I've stayed. So when I think about my legal background, which is more negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and back in the day, that was really an up and coming industry of alternatives to the courthouse. So I moved to Salt Lake to open up a Salt Lake City office. I was the youngest regional vice president in the country, and I became more of a spokesperson for the cause and not doing settlement conferences and pre-hearing conferences. And so I had a friend that was an HR person that put me through a battery of tests. And what came up for my next was finance.
I love it.
And financial planning. So I moved back to Denver and I thought, oh my goodness, this is such an easy peasy career for me. In 3 to 5 years, I'm going to knock it out of the park. You know, be successful, do great things. Because remember, I was at regional vice president by the time I was 30. And then I was like, okay, 5 to 7. No. Oh, 7 to 10 years. I will figure out this journey. And candidly, it took me really that long. It took me that long. And what happened is one day, when you get a financial statement, your investment account, on the back then, was 8 pages, but two to a page of very tiny print of disclosures. And I finally read it. The legal background, I should read this stuff. And I finally read it, and I'll never forget the emotion I had upon reading it. I all of a sudden realized that I was not a fiduciary that put clients' interests first at all times and worked for the client, that I actually worked for the brokerage firm I was with. I'll never forget that. Because as much as you want to do your best work, you're doing your best work, but you're in the confines of working for the brokerage firm, like the products that are available to you, the incentives that they give you. And it wasn't until that time that I recognized and then realized I have to leave. I am completely out of alignment with who I am as a woman, as a person. And that's when I created Wealth Legacy Institute. And that was easily 15 years ago. So the industry on average is about 25% women. It's a hard field historically because of how it was structured. Basically, the environment is sales historically. So unless you're with a independent registered investment advisory firm, RIA firm, that's the only type of firm that always puts your interest first at all times, just like a CPA. And that's what Wealth Legacy Institute is. And so I've been in alignment ever since, always a fiduciary, and creating the firm that actually has the clients first, not last. If you kind of think of how that works, And then it's much more joy. Every day you love what you're doing because you're completely in alignment and helping people really maximize their potentials and their dreams. I love what I do.
That is that is so interesting. I think because I don't think that many people realize the difference. And in fact, I was enlightened in that as well, because my husband and I have been working with a fiduciary, which he has explained to me about just exactly what you did. He says, yeah, he went through the same thing, is that he was working for another company and or working for a brokerage firm or something. And it's like, it's, they incentivize you to offer products and, and stocks or mutual funds, but it's really to benefit the company, not necessarily the client. And now being able to be an independent, or to be that fiduciary, it's like it really is focusing in on the client. So I love that that's what you're doing, because I think people don't realize it, and then they get really bogged down. And I think in particular women, especially, because this was something we were talking about, is that so many women traditionally, or I think the majority of women, are really the spenders in the family. I mean, women in general, consumers, because that's, advertisers are always trying to appeal to women because we're the ones controlling it. And yet at the same time, women don't necessarily understand about investing and finance. So I'm trying to think, why do you think that is? I mean, I have an idea. I sort of know the answer to this, but why do you think women are not as financially savvy, I guess we could say?
I think all of your listeners are saying that out loud, what you think the answer is to that, because we all know what it is. It's really been inaccessible to us in terms of the languaging of the profession. There's nothing about investing and trading that really excites me, even though that's what I do, but I don't do it and lead with that at all, because there's no amount of rate of return that can create an extraordinary life. And so for women, I think historically, yes, women manage the budget, the cash flow of the household and the family. And oftentimes it's no time, no energy. I'm spent, I'm surviving.
Mm.
But if you could bring that in with financial planning, take the money piece, the investment piece, bridge that with financial planning, all of a sudden the dialogue becomes much more enriching. It's more accessible for them. Like, how do I take care of my family? Goal achievement. So I have choices and know where I stand. That it's not about which investments over here. It's really about what's the future of my family and my spouse, and when can we step off? Because we're just in the grind, saving for retirement, and not necessarily even taking time of how do you live in retirement. And I think that's what our firm does really well, is we recognize that transition from saving to living in is big. And most people in my business stop at okay, you can do it the day you retire, and there's no conversation about this whole other next 30 years, which is you finally have a chance to breathe and really have impact. And I think, that's such a great, if I may
Yes.
share a pyramid on this, and this is, I think, really helpful to understand. So if we had a pyramid like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the base of that pyramid is managing money. So we have to have our base security needs met before we can even dream.
Right.
And once our base needs are met, we begin to think of the possibilities of achieving goals. That's the next on that pyramid as you move up. And then after achieving goals, that's that financial planning piece. Is peace of mind. It's lifestyle. It's all of a sudden, you know what your numbers are, you have a vision of what your future, and it seems conceivably possible. So that lifestyle goal all of a sudden allows you to breathe, to then go to the top of the pyramid, which is impact. And when you have a chance to breathe and have peace of mind, it's so much easier to think about, why am I here on this planet? What is my purpose and vision? And how do I change the relationship with my spouse, if I have one, to make these last 30 everything that we've dreamed about?
Absolutely. I love that. And I know what I want to ask you. And just to follow up with that, And maybe, I don't know who you work with specifically, but do you work with women business owners? Because, and I'm wondering if there's any special um, challenge with that as well, because now we're not only looking at being able to grow our money to be able to, provide for a family, but then we're also trying to be able to manage the business as well. So what have you found in working with women in that respect?
That we do it all. That we're overwhelmed and stressed and mentally exhausted. I try not to do that in the nature of my work as the leader, and everything that we talk about is balance. And you can't help someone else if you haven't helped yourself. And so I think that as women entrepreneurs, the most important thing, if we tend to think it's the money, and if we had $1 million, we'd be able to have choices.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you start to go, well, what I'm saving doesn't seem like it's getting me to that goal. And then we realize, okay, well, maybe instead of trying to wait for that goal to live, maybe I'll start doing the things I love a little bit today. So maybe I'll start reading more or doing some hobbies that are important to me. But then when you start setting time aside for yourself, you get interrupted, and you can't finish whatever it is that you started because everyone wants something from you. And then you realize, hopefully, as we go through this journey, is we realize, you know what? I think I need to give myself more self-respect and not let people interrupt me, because it's important for me to take care of myself. And once you recognize self-respect and you carve out that time for yourself, all these other things as a women entrepreneur unfold for you. Because it really starts with the inner. Because the if you don't take care of the inner stuff about who we are, there's no amount of money that will ever be enough. I know that sounds like kind of existential in some weird way, but anytime the money conversation, like I always say, how you do money is how you do life. So any money conversation ties back to who you are and what you do. So if you put your head in the sand around money, you're putting your head in the sand around life. Like, what are the things you're ignoring that you need to address? And I think that as women entrepreneurs, the conversation to start with is kind of, what are my first money memories? What are those first money memories? And begin to unpack some of those things, because oftentimes that money story that we tell ourselves was when we were 5 or 6 or 8 or 9, whatever that is, that we're still carrying today. That doesn't have any impact on who you are today as a 40-year-old, or whatever you are in your life, in your journey, and who you are today versus when you were 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's so true. It really, I know I discovered that for myself in my own journey and becoming an entrepreneur, and that realizing, especially sometimes I would hit like a ceiling and how much money I was making in the business. And a lot of that is just going back to some of the beliefs that I picked up from my parents, and their ideas about money, their ideas about entrepreneurship in particular. My mother did not have a high regard actually for business owners, because the only business owner in our family was her brother, and they did not get along. And so it was, that I had to really take a hard look at some of that stuff in order to be able to change my relationship with money, to be able to be more successful. And I'm still working on that. And I think it's always going to happen. Um,
We continually reset, like
yeah.
you said. We put a level, a ceiling on what we think is the appropriate amount of money to make, and whatever that ceiling is, if we get close to it, then we back off and we don't work as hard, because this is what it is. So our job is to up level and up level and up level. And I say this because I had to do it for myself uh, in my own business, and now I have a multi-million-dollar firm. But you know how long I remember, 7 to 10 years, maybe I'm starting to pay for myself first. Um, so I think up leveling, know what your set point is and begin to raise it. And Gloria, if I were to really share in my book, Money Secrets, I tell my story. And Money Secrets is a great book. It's a very quick read, 120 pages, very accessible, no lingo. And at the end of each chapter are questions you should ask yourself or questions a financial advisor should be asking you. It's a really good book. Anyway, I tell my story, and in there, my parents got divorced, and my mom had full custody of 3 teenage girls. I'm the middle of the 3. And my mom had no skills at the time. She married early, and she applied for it and started to get, I got government assisted lunches. And I had to hand that red ticket every single day at lunch to the cashier for my lunch. And I would look around, shame, huge. I could still get incredibly emotional when I think of worthiness, unworthy, shame, not enough. My mom can't afford, my parents don't love me. Oh, we could tell all the stories we want about all of that stuff.
Yep.
So for me, I had to unpack all of that. And then I defaulted on my college school loans. So what was important to my mother, to her 3 daughters, is to make sure you get an education because no one can take it away from you. Interesting, isn't that? So I complied, all the way through law school with a huge amount of debt, not understanding any of the consequences associated with that amount of debt. And in today's dollars, that amount of debt would be equivalent to about $92,000.
Oh, wow.
That's how in debt I was back then. And so I never thought that I would have money. I thought that was for other people. And one day, Gloria, I had an anonymous person put $1,000 down on my school loan.
Oh, wow.
And the balance went down, not up. The fact that I even noticed it went down was shocking because I was putting my head in the sand.
Right.
And I'll never forget how that made me feel. It made me stop and think, wow, who cares for me enough to do that? And what am I doing to myself that's not caring for myself like someone else did for me? And that moment of gratitude and love, I guess I'm going to say love, allowed me to feel it, to then take the time I needed for myself to show my own self-love as it relates to money. And that was the start of when I started turning things around. So when that happened, I just started in finance. I had the legal background. And so that was the start. And I started in the industry. And so it was that journey. And here I am today. Unbelievable.
That's amazing. What a story. And I love how you really relate it to self-love and being able to show yourself the love, to be able to then take care of your money. I don't think we don't really think about it that way, and especially because there's so many crazy sayings about money, and it's like money's the root of all evil, but it's actually not. That's not the actual quote, or something is like the love of money. But again, we still have to love money in a way, and because it's really just a vehicle, and it's a method. We have to use money. There's no getting around it. Everything that we need in life, at some point, we're going to have to pay something for. The days of, yes, you can certainly barter, but even bartering is still a form of money. I actually used to belong to a barter organization, and they called it barter dollars. So because that's still what we were using. So it's still an energy exchange.
Do you know Mark Nepo? He's a poet.
I've heard of him, I think.
His quote is, the reason for money, so I may misquote a little bit, but the purpose of money is to help make love work.
Oh, interesting.
So you had said love money, like love money, love yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah.
Or love yourself and money will follow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm getting goosebumps on that one. I love that one. Yeah, because isn't that the truth? Because if you think about the converse of that, if you don't love yourself, how are you going to be able to help other people? How are you going to be able to make a living? Because you're not showing yourself enough love to be able to do the things that are going to help you to show up in the world, to be able to be, of service to other people, if you're not feeling that way towards yourself. And so, yeah, it's really going to be difficult to earn any kind of a living, or to be able to even receive money as well, even
Right.
just receiving money as a gift. So
That's a outstanding point, because if you think about, there are two laws of money. One is the human-made law, which is what we talked about, the financial
Right.
planning, the integration of investments, risk tolerance, you name it, tax minimization. The other law of money is the natural law. And the natural law, we already talked about some of these. The first is like giving and receiving. To be able to give, to be able to receive. The other is cause and effect. And ebb and flow. As business owners, as women, when it's ebbing and it doesn't feel good,
Right.
is when we should lean in and work on our skill set. There's a reason it's ebbing, just like natural law. It ebbs for us to get recharged, recertified, whatever it is that we need to do. So when it flows again, then we are completely ready for it. And then, intention and desire. I think those are the ones that come to me naturally, is ebb and flow, cause and effect, giving and receiving. And so and you can't have one without the other.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you could understand natural law really well and not have any money, and you could have a lot of money and be totally unhappy
Hmm.
because you don't understand the two laws,
Yeah.
and that they need to be in harmony and in balance.
Mhm. Love it. Love it. I want to learn a little bit more about you, and especially about, in this journey that you've been on. So what would you say is the biggest challenge you've ever had to overcome?
So many. I think as an entrepreneur is getting past myself. Uh, uh, you cannot, when you work for an employer, you could have bad days and you still get paid. When you work for yourself, you have every area of opportunity of struggle or weakness. You have to figure out how to overcome it and play to your strengths, not play to your weaknesses, play to your strengths. But you can't ignore yourself. So I would say, for me personally, as an entrepreneur, my biggest lesson was to know who I am. And the business aspect of running a firm naturally unfolds. But I did hire a coach throughout the years as I found these flaws coming up, like managing people.
Right.
How do you manage people? How do oh, you have to have one-on-ones. Oh, you need team meetings.
Mm.
Because, I'm great at inspiring and finding vision and being very creative. I'm very left brain and right brain, which is so nice in the nature of my work. But yeah, I've had many coaches along the way to know when I can't do it.
Mhm.
So that would be the second.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so important because it's definitely, I think, the lesson that all entrepreneurs have to learn when they get started. Because of course you get started by yourself typically. And then as you're learning how to grow, or as you're growing, then you have to learn new skills and or learn how to start delegating things to other people because you can't manage it all. And one of those is learning to be a manager, because that's not necessarily an inherent skill. Um, Sometimes maybe perhaps moms might have an advantage because we're managing our children or our husband, but then not necessarily too, because now you're dealing with not exactly strangers, but you're dealing with people who you don't have that relationship with, that familiar relationship. And so now you're going to have to learn to be perhaps more diplomatic about how to get things done that you
Yeah,
want.
that we're not with our children, right?
Yeah.
Hey, how many times do I have to tell you?
Right. You can't quite yell at them the same way.
No,
It
no, not at
doesn't
all.
work.
Not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Um, so what really gets you excited about the work you're doing?
Mm, mm. Whew, I love these questions, because it evolves.
Mm.
And I would have to say that I get to wake up every day and hang out with people that I care about and love, our clients, and talk about the most important things in their lives that is extremely vulnerable. Money is vulnerable, and life, and understanding that. I think we know more about many of our clients than their adult children know about them. And so, and to enjoy their passions together. To go on the back of a Harley Davidson while I visit clients, and or to ride a horse, or all these things, to watch their joy and be a part of that, best thing ever. And that's what I am inspired by every day, to see them live their dreams, to be in alignment with their purpose and their passion. And I get to be a part of that by their glow. Phew, that's remarkable.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I feel something similar, because when I'm coaching clients, or even when I was still doing, more of the copywriting work, to be able to see a client, start actually getting business from their website from something I was
Yeah.
writing, or seeing a client start to see possibilities in what they're doing because of the work that we've been talking through, it's so rewarding. Um, One of the things I also love to ask people about, and I think in particular, this is a good one, is for someone in your industry in particular, what's a commonly held belief that you really disagree with?
There are so many money myths out there.
Mm.
I don't know where to start. I think that Wall Street historically has fostered a lot of those myths around money because it perpetuated an industry. Um, the biggest one that I don't believe necessarily in individual investing in stocks. That's what our grandparents did.
Right.
The technology of investing, unless you work for an employer and you have, of course, the employee stock purchase plan and various other things, there are strategies around that. But generally, to buy individual stocks, I think time and money, it doesn't make sense. And to be able to use low cost indexed type investments with science, because there is science out there now. There's evidence-based science around investing that has been kept quiet for a long time, but it's over 50, 60 years of data.
Oh, wow.
And if you use science tied to that low cost indexing, tied to a financial plan, the likelihood of your success is almost guaranteed.
Huh.
Because where we fail is ourselves. When the markets go down, we get fearful and we step off.
Right.
When the markets go up, we have greed and we want more, when we should be doing the exact opposite. When markets are down, you should be all in and stay the course. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to dig up your plants and go, let's see how these plants are doing. I want to set them on the side and not let them work their, again, ebb and flow of the harvest.
Right.
So I think to understand money as, it should not be sexy. It should be boring. It should be tied to a financial plan that keeps you on course, and to not pay attention to the money, because the money, if you let it go and do what it needs to do, will work for you. And we are the biggest reasons why we fail financially. It's not the capital markets, even though we blame the capital markets with all the things that are going on in the world, inflation, the Fed policy, interest rates. It's not about that at all, because that's ebb and flow.
So
I had to stop because I could keep going, Gloria. I had to stop myself. Oh my gosh.
I can imagine. Well, if there was one thing that you could do to actually change the industry, what would that be?
The industry started out in sales, as we discussed. I think it needs to be a profession. I think it needs to be a certified, right now, the certification is certified financial planner. CFP right now is that designation that you want to make sure your person has that at a minimum. But if that were like a CPA, a true practitioner in the field, I think it would level the playing field versus a salesperson feeling like you're going to go buy a car on a lot and get fleeced.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully that will possibly happen. I don't know, but definitely, if you are out there listening or watching, and you're wanting to do more with investing, or to be able to start taking a better look at your money, then I think that is a good idea, is to, maybe you could elaborate on that. So who should you look for? Because you mentioned CFP at a minimum. What other criteria should someone look for?
And again, Money Secrets, Keys to Smart Investing, my book actually outlines that whole thing.
Oh, okay.
It's almost like reading that book is your protective armor, so that you could make calls. Because it's like, I hate to go to the dentist. I think if you are going to get help from a financial advisory firm, It's probably like going to the dentist. It's hard work. And you want to make sure that you really feel comfortable with the person that you're working with. So that book, again, is the armor that allows you to make these calls, meet with different people, learn the style. What's their investment philosophy? Is it in alignment with yours? Do they do financial planning? How is it tied together? And then most importantly, do you feel comfortable with that person? Can you have an intimate conversation that doesn't allow you to feel like that you don't trust them?
Right. Yeah.
You want to make sure that would you hang out with this person, even though they're doing the money job and the investment job and the financial planning job? Do you like them as a person? And are they in alignment with what you believe? So those are the things. But I call them the C's: charisma, competence, all of those things. CFP
Right.
that I outline in the book. And then the last chapter is how to fire your advisor.
Yeah. What 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 would make someone want to or need either want or need to be able to do that? Because obviously, if your investments are losing money, but is there anything else like, a red flag maybe that you should be, watching out for?
If you continually have a pit in your stomach when they're suggesting you buy something, trust it. Trust it. Obviously, when we need disability insurance or life insurance, there are moments in our period of time that we need those products. But the overall advice collectively should not be product driven at all. The person you hire should have no investment of whether you choose to buy it or not buy it. There's nothing to sell. They don't sell anything. So that's probably part of that answer.
I appreciate that. Yeah, because it can be daunting, I think, for someone to start getting involved in that. And like I say, I think especially for women, because I think traditionally we still are not that haven't really we oftentimes will leave it to like our spouse unless life circumstances change and now we're suddenly single again or something, and then we're having to, especially if this happens later in life, and now you've got to start paying attention to this thing. But it is interesting that that we're not doing enough of it, and we really need to. So women out there, pay attention. Don't just, life circumstances happen, and even if you've got the most happy marriage, you have a right to decide where your money's going to. And so I would encourage you to have conversations with
The
your
outcomes are
spouse,
better.
right?
The
Yeah.
outcomes are better when you're engaged.
Yeah.
If you leave the investing to your spouse doesn't know what they're doing. And honestly, it's stressful for them because they're pretending more often than not, or they think they know more than
Right.
maybe they possibly know. So I would suggest do not leave that burden on your spouse and get engaged. Because once you're engaged in the conversation, all of a sudden it goes to financial planning, not investing. Investing, remember, should be boring. And so when you put it together to your goals, joint goals, then all of a sudden beautiful things unfold. And all of a sudden you're on the same page and you're having conversations that are not nagging about spending this or not taking this vacation. They're collaborative. And that's a game changer for many couples. The first time they bring someone in, a financial advisor, that is the number one thing they share, is that for the first time they're on the same page and they have a track to run on together.
That's so important. It really is so important, because if you're not, then it's just going to be more recipe for strife and stress, and then nobody's going to be happy. So you
And
both
women
need
are
it.
better.
Yeah.
Statistically, the research shows that women do better on investing and planning than men because they are more patient for the long term to unfold.
Mhm. Yes, I've seen this happen.
Yes, so embrace it.
With especially, with friends, and it's like, the husband, panics at, the market's turning. I was like, oh my God, we got to go to cash now. And it's like,
Mhm.
and then they miss the run, when it goes back up again because they
So
pulled
you don't want
everything.
to exit the market. And
Mm.
remember that the media, it's almost like financial pornography, if I were to just call it out. They want you to be afraid. They want you to stay focused on their station. They want you to continue to lean in and listen.
Yep.
When, Warren Buffett once said that if I didn't know anything that was going on in the world for 2 years, I'd be okay. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, it's true.
So if that like, oh my God, the world's falling to an end, we're starting to go, oh, are we about to go into a recession? Maybe. You don't change anything,
Yeah.
but people in sales will want you to believe that you need to change a lot.
Mm. Yeah, and I think I just want to point out, maybe it's not that you're also saying you're not going to change anything. There may be some little tweaks
Yes.
that you might
Thank
make,
you for
but
that clarity.
probably the overall vision is probably should be kept intact, as opposed to just totally, changing course and pulling everything out.
Right. That's a good clarification.
Okay.
Minor course corrections along the way, but your vision doesn't change
Yeah,
or your
absolutely.
goals. Yeah, that's
Cool. Awesome.
good clarity.
Appreciate that. Now, you mentioned your book a couple of times. So where can people get that? And is it on Amazon, on your website, or
Yes, on Amazon. So there's also
okay.
a second book, Retirement Secrets,
Ah,
Keys to Retiring Happy, Healthy, and Free. So the money secrets is, how do you get to retirement? How do you get that armor so that you could actually navigate and ask yourself the right questions? And then the retirement secrets is, the day you retire, it's more of a lifestyle book. So you could have all the money in the world and have a failed retirement. What does a successful retirement look like? And I love this book because it has a lot of client stories in it.
awesome.
That we can all relate to, that we've heard, or we know somebody that has gone through this. So that's what the second book is, and Amazon is where you can pick both of those up.
Okay, awesome. And I would think that even if you're still, 10, 20 years away from retirement, it's probably a good idea to still pick up that book now, so that you can be prepared, even just mindset wise, and
Or to send to your
or
parents to
yeah.
help them. If you're wondering why they're struggling,
Mm,
guess what? The book will answer that for them and give them tools to
okay.
navigate through it. Because
Okay.
there's a lot of, one of the chapters in there is really the questions to ask. Like, if your spouse wants to retire and you're not ready,
Mm,
how do you have that conversation of being on different pages?
mm,
How do you communicate through retirement when all of a sudden you really didn't have a great relationship and now they're going to be with you 24/7? That's really frightening to a lot of people, and particularly women. I'm just
yeah.
like calling it out,
Yes.
or they have no friends and you're their social calendar. How do you help them get past that? That you're
Mm,
not all of a sudden more burdened by the choices that they made without you having much decision making in that.
yeah.
So that's why it's so important to stay involved in the money conversation and the financial planning conversation so that you have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. You have just shared so much good information today, and I hope everyone has gotten tremendous value out of it. And if someone wants to learn a little bit more about your company and the services that you offer, where's the best place for them to go?
Yes, thank you. Wealthlegacyinstitute.com. Wealthlegacyinstitute.com.
Excellent. Well, I will have that in the show notes for those of you who are listening and don't have a pen handy, if you're driving or what have you. So I will make sure that you go to liveloveengagepodcast.com and you'll be able to get all that information. So thank you again for being with us today, Kim. It was a real pleasure and joy to have you on the show, and I appreciate all of the wonderful information you shared with our audience.
Thank you. A lot of fun.
And thank all of you for watching and for listening. I really do appreciate all of you as well. And I encourage you, if you did get some value out of this today, to share this episode with a friend and introduce them to Live, Love, Engage. That would be wonderful. And I would so appreciate it. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.